In my last video, I talked about the fact that companies need to start conducting business activities. Here, some clarifications need to be made. The thing is, many people misunderstood and thought that now it's not allowed to open inactive companies, that Montenegro is now only available to real business people. No, you can still not conduct any business activity. But at the same time, as I mentioned in the video, you kind of need to appear as if you are conducting business. In short, it's a paradox. Actually, this paradox is explained very simply, which I'll talk about now. There are basically two options. The first option is to conduct real business activity. For working programmers, for example, this is actually quite straightforward. It's enough to issue an invoice to the client from your company and accordingly receive the payment into your company's account. This can be your entire income or just a part of it, for example, 10 or 20%. The second option is if your company doesn't conduct any real business activity, you can simply imitate such activity. For example, you can ask your neighbor Ivanov to pay you for, say, making horseshoes for Ivanov's horse. In short, just imitate business activity. That is, the company doesn't actually conduct any business just as it didn't before, but you present it as if it supposedly does have some activity. In short, by and large, nothing really changes. Companies can still, just as before, either operate or not operate. The only difference compared to how it was before is that now it is recommended, or at least I recommend at least, to imitate some activity. For example, by accepting one payment per month, which only slightly increases the costs of maintaining a residence permit. Moreover, the expenses still remain the lowest in Europe. You can simply compare them with those in other countries. Moreover, when I moved to live in Montenegro 11 years ago, the costs of maintaining a residence permit were the same as they are now. They were only reduced for us in 2015, when directors were allowed to be employed at a quarter-time rate. And just as people fled to live in Montenegro 11 years ago, now everyone is leaving. Plus or minus 100 euros doesn't make any difference for most people. In any case, it's still significantly cheaper than in other European countries. Since there's no longer any point in completely hiding all your income, some benefits have appeared. Namely, first, the right to a pension. Here, I need to clarify and say that to receive a pension in Montenegro, you need to have worked in the country for at least 15 years at a full-time rate. If you work at a quarter-time rate, which is what our Russian-speaking immigrants have been doing in recent years, to hide as much income as possible, you won't get any pension. But if you work full-time, which many people will now start doing, it becomes possible. Second, you now have official declared income, which you might be able to use in some way. For example, this is important when immigrating to certain other European countries where they assess your income in the country you previously lived in. And it's also important when making major purchases. For instance, if you buy an apartment with declared income, no one will ever ask you where you got the money for that apartment.